We are going down the rabbit hole of furniture from 200 years ago. But anyway, everyone, hello. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel, where I have COVID right now. And it's not going to stop the show, though, because we have to discuss this marvelous 200-year-old work of French decorative art. A really fine domestic piece here that's truly emblematic of furniture from the Charles X period. Now, this is a rare and short-lived style from the 1820s, which was aptly named after the monarch of the day, Charles X. And now, just as the Empire style from the Napoleonic period previously said that we are as grand as ancient Rome, we see here how Charles X furniture says that we miss ancient Rome. It's a romantic style expressing a sort of graceful nostalgia for the impossible bygone beauty of the ancient world. And anyway, both the chairs and the commode here date from this time, the 1820s, and I have done other videos on pieces from this time which served as a catalyst for much more detailed rambling about the style and about sort of the history of the period. And so I recommend those videos if you'd like to have a historic overview in addition to just taking a closer look at this interesting piece now. And so seeing a doored commode like this, very rare type of commode, mind you, and I will also add that a commode is simply a work of decorative art called commode because this word means handy in French, a great name for these handy side tables which were fitted with drawers. But anyway, seeing a publication quality period piece like this is really a way for us to hone our eyes onto what was the art of furniture in the pre-industrial era. And so the goal for collectors here is really so that we can just identify what the qualities of art furniture are from this early original timeline in the decorative arts, spanning from the Renaissance to the year 1840, when furniture was most skillfully produced. As pieces like this really greatly differ in every way from so much of what we ambiguously call antiques out there. And right away, you can see why this style is renowned for its refinement. Look at the precision of these palmettes here in amaranth or purple heartwood inlaid into this typically Charles X bird's eye maple background. And these palmettes are nothing new. These are in fact taken from the ancient Greco-Roman decorative repertoire of millennia ago. And that's part of what makes a piece like this a neoclassical one, because at the time it was a new expression of ancient classical art. Now we're going to see as well, though, that the color scheme here is imitating the color scheme of antique classical pottery. But overall, there's just a rectilinearity, a poise, and a symmetry to a piece like this, unlike what we're going to see on an anti-classical commode from the Rococo period, such as this one, made about 75 years earlier. So the piece is neoclassical, but it's not nearly as stark as Empire furniture, which preceded it. We're going to see here that the sharp angles have now been rounded with subtle moldings, softened by curves at pretty much every opportunity. And we note that the overall decor here on a Charles X piece is lent to it by this subtler, more refined inlay, and not by the proud gilded bronzes of the Empire. As this style remains neoclassical, we see that Charles X works really diverge from works of the Empire, gaining in elegance, let's say, what they lose in majesty. So if we look at two commodes from these two successive periods here, we're going to see how period furniture really is a three-dimensional expression of the change in the tenor of the times. We move from the proud neoclassicism of Napoleon to this more impossibly beautiful neoclassicism of the restoration of the Bourbon monarchy. And we're also going to see how literally the materials used in this Charles X piece also reflect a change in the times. When Empire furniture was using dark mahogany from its imperial colonies, we see here now that Charles X pieces, a little more humbly, are using indigenous bright French maple from, a French forest, as well as a lighter blue-colored marble here, which is also indigenous to France. Now, as I said, these doored commodes are quite rare, where the drawers are concealed by two doors here. And if we look at this Charles X later commode of similar quality, we're going to see that it has drawers which are exposed, as usual, but we're also going to see that it demonstrates the inverse of the wood color scheme of this lighter maple one that we've been looking at. Now, this is the later Charles X style, where simply by the mid-1820s, they had sort of gotten tired of using the light background with dark inlay, and so they progressed to simply inverting the color scheme using a dark background with lighter inlays of lemon wood. And now, so moving inside of the piece, we're going to notice that there's a simulated key escutcheon here, small and discreet in brass, just for symmetry, even though there is no keyhole here. And so at the turn of the key, the doors reveal these 3 English drawers, which are perfectly fitted inside the piece, such that they slide out very gracefully. And now the facades of these drawers are veneered in a beautifully striated sort of golden maple here, and they're inlaid with a much darker wood. But all in all, we see that the color is basically in its original state of conservation because this part of the piece has been shielded from the elements inside the commode all of this time. And now I actually went ahead and removed these drawers entirely just to show the furniture enthusiasts among us what this piece looks like inside. The insides are often quite clean, unoxidized, as they've been hidden from the air. And we see parts that were probably added at a later date in here. But this piece seems in its original state of conservation, although it surely has undergone maintenance restorations, such as revarnishing, without which it really wouldn't have ended up here in front of the camera today in such good condition. And so now, if we move up to this wonderful drawer here, just the bevel, the molding of it, the shape of it is, for one thing, remarkable, but we should also note what I believe is perhaps one of the most elegant examples of Charles X inlay work here, this beautiful pattern that deploys from both sides of the keyhole. But if we go inside of this drawer, we're going to see, by pulling the key, mind you, there are no handles. That really keeps us from having to use gilded bronze here. And instead of a gilded bronze key escutcheon like what we would have seen on an Empire piece, we see that the key escutcheon is simulated by inlay. But anyway, inside of this drawer, we're going to see some of the clutter left by the original owner, who was a late doctor in Nantes, and apparently he left his bulldog pedigree in here, a very distinguished dog he used to own. We see some of my paperwork as well, and some of the cash that the late doctor had. But anyway, I also managed to acquire the secretary, which was part of his collection, that was published in Connaissance des Arts in the 1980s. This is just a key French publication on the subject of art furniture. All of this to say that if we think about where this piece came from, of course the piece is in such good condition because it was the property of a very serious and meticulous collector of this very rare style. And so now if we close the drawer, the next thing that we should look at here, moving up to the bleu turquin marble, is this wonderful molding that sort of bridges the gap, transitions here gracefully between the case piece and the marble. Now we're going to see that it is primarily in a darker wood with this lighter inlay. Seems to be a series of cap pieces here. We can see the cracks every so often. And this color scheme here seems to foreshadow the darker rosewood and lemonwood Charles X pieces, which will soon eclipse this maple earlier variant of the style. So as we glance at the wonderful bleu turquin marble, we see that it features a single gorge that runs around the edge. And that's just an added sign of quality. And then we're also just going to notice the beautiful contrast here that's really artfully done between the pale blue and the pale orange of the exterior. And so, as per tradition, we're now going to look at some of the hidden parts of the piece, especially under the marble here, where we're going to see that the marble itself is unpolished beneath, although it is patinaed where it's been resting on the wood for so long. And then we're also going to see how this frame that I mentioned earlier, decorated with these beautiful veneered cap pieces here that run along the front, this frame that transitions from the case piece up to the marble, it is actually screwed down into the piece. And so to look at the joinery of the tops of the side post of the commode, we would actually have to remove this inch-thick frame here via these screws. Now that's a bizarre thing for many of us interested in these pre-industrial period pieces, as it isn't until rather late here in that original timeline, moving into the 1820s, that we begin to encounter screws in these pieces. Now, interestingly, if we remove them, we're going to see these are very early 19th century screws with very deep and somewhat irregular screw threads, but nevertheless, for those of us more interested in 18th century pieces, early 19th century pieces, it's a little unsettling to see a screw in a piece of period furniture. But anyway, with Charles X works, we're right on the onset of industrialization, and that's part of why these pieces are so exquisite, because tools and techniques had advanced to a point where they're able to make things with more precision than ever before. But there are also a few screws. And now finally, for the back of the piece, we're going to see that the marble is left rough, as we would expect, and then we're going to see that the back is quite dirty and oxidized, although it is very smooth. Now this is something that might startle some of us because most of the pre-industrial period pieces that some of us are familiar with collecting outside of this rare Charles X style, they date from the 18th or even the 17th centuries when the backs are famously very irregular, despite the beauty of the facades of the pieces. But here we see that on the onset of the industrial age, they were able to make smooth back panels without too much trouble. And so everybody, with all of that being said, I do thank you very much for your time. I hope that you've enjoyed taking a closer look at this remarkable trace of the 1820s. And if you enjoyed the video, please like it, and I'll also invite you to please subscribe to the channel, as it would greatly help in the endeavor of creating an online period furniture library of the most compelling pieces that I encounter. Thank you.